Please note, this episode features descriptions of Renée Bergeron's body after she was unalived. Listener discretion is advised. Amanda Campos, the daughter of Renée Bergeron, whose tragic story was the focus of the podcast, Why Can't We Talk About Amanda's Mom? Amanda has long lived in the shadow of a horrific event, one that took the life of her mother, but also left her with a lifelong search for answers. 30 years ago, on November 15, 1993, the body of a woman was discovered along a dirt road near Interstate 10 in Mobile, Alabama. Renée, Amanda's mother, was found in a brutal state, violated, lifeless, and with few clues to help authorities solve the crime. The shocking nature of Renée's death might have demanded a public outcry, yet instead, her case was met with disheartening silence. As the years passed, it felt as though her mother's story was forgotten by those who could have helped, leaving Amanda to carry the weight of this grief and her desire for justice on her own. In the decades that followed, investigative journalist, homicide investigator, and criminal behaviorist Sarah Kalin took it upon herself to re-examine Renée's murder. But for Amanda, this investigation represents more than a story. It's her mother, her loss, and the painful process of seeking justice in a world that seemed to overlook her. This is a story of love, loss, and a daughter's unyielding determination to ensure her mother is never forgotten. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Amanda's personal tale. And I'm going to try to say this all without crying. So, listeners, I don't know if I am even mentally prepared to have this conversation this morning because it is filled with so much love, empathy, and sincerity. Because this is a woman that I learned about back in 2019. I received a DM from a woman by the name of Sarah Kalin who said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I've noticed that you are working on a Ted Bundy project and doing it in a way that I've never seen done before. But I would love to talk to you about this case." And this case is the murder of Renée Bergeron. I think Sarah and I spoke for about 2 hours that afternoon on the phone. And by the end of that call, I said, "Whatever you need, I am here to help in any capacity that I can." Then she tells me about Amanda. And she shares that Amanda just responded to her on Facebook. Can you tell me about what happened that particular day?
Yeah, so I got a message from Sarah, and at first I was very taken back because, nobody's every time I've tried to reach out, nobody's ever responded, or I couldn't get in touch with the right people, or I didn't get any response back at all. So, of course I did a little digging and waited a couple of days before I responded. And immediately I said, "Yeah, if you're for real, I'm for real. Like, let's go."
Yeah.
I waited literally my whole life for this. So I told I'd rather be part, even to the point where most people don't want to be. I want to know all of it. Tell me all the things. Because um, when it happened, I was 10 years old. So my grandparents who raised me, they handled it the way they should have for a 10-year-old. But as an adult, I had a lot of questions that were still not answered. And as much as I wanted to ask my grandma, it's also hard for her. I can't fathom losing a child. So that's why I told Sarah, whatever you find out, no matter how gruesome it is, I want to know. I want to know it all. Because that's the only way we get answers, if we are open and honest about all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And from that point on, Amanda, your story is one that truly has stuck with me over these years, and it's merely because you were a child when this happened. Can you take me back to those earlier years, though, with your mom and share some kind of those brighter moments that you've had with her?
Oh yeah. So my grandparents raised me since I was 11 months old. Um, And at the time, growing up through years, you kind of go through a lot of emotions with grief, and that emotion was how I felt about my mom as well. As a child, I remember all of our visits. She was a hairdresser, so she would come and cut my hair. She would, dye my, perm my grandma's hair. Um, and we would go ride bikes together. We would go to the French market in New Orleans, and she loved to do that, to go shopping, and went to flea markets. And I just, when you're with her, she lights up a whole room, and there's no way to explain it unless you ever met her. She's just one of those people where the light was so bright that it's still, all these years later, missed upon so many people in my family. Um, and I remember telling her, my Christmas list of the things that I wanted, with his name brand shoes or whatever that my grandparents couldn't get for me or wouldn't get, she would
Mm.
always do whatever she could to make
Yeah.
sure that I knew. She send cards for every occasion, and I mean every occasion. Happy Halloween cards, happy Valentine's Day cards, happy Fourth of July cards, or postcards, or whatever she was. So she wasn't present in the day to day, but she was present because we knew. I knew. I never felt unloved by my mom. Just so many memories of just laying in bed, and she was like my best friend. It was like when she came
Mhm.
in, it was like a sleepover. So I definitely remember those talks and those times, and just being embraced by her. And when
Yeah,
she was here, I was all that she was paying attention to.
I remember that. And correct me if I'm wrong. You two used to watch like true crime shows together too,
Oh
right?
yes,
I
unsolved
remember.
mysteries.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
Yeah.
think it was Dateline back then, but I know for sure unsolved mysteries was a big one that we used to watch. And just talk about, what we thought happened, or what was going to happen, or I hope they find the person. So it's very cliche that she's basically an unsolved mystery.
Yeah. Going back to 2019, there was a moment where I had the opportunity to meet you on Zoom.
Hmm.
And Sarah and I were actually in Toronto. And in this meeting, you shared one of the most heartbreaking stories I think I've ever been told, which was about your school
Hmm.
and finding out about your mother's passing, but then another student. Are you okay to share that with me today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, so I went to a Catholic private school my whole life, from pre-K to eighth grade, same school. And my mom was killed when I was in fifth grade. People at school knew, the counselor knew I went to counseling. I talked to the teachers. Everybody knew. And then, and it felt normal. I felt I appreciated that they knew and that they were there for me. And then in our eighth grade year, a girl in our class, her mom passed away, from a horrible accident. And they did a mask for her.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, for Mother's Day, she got to read a special poem that she wrote. She got a flower and all this attention because her mom passed away, and a few other students in the school. But it really hurt because it was like, my mom passed away too,
Yeah.
and nobody cared. Nobody. I didn't get a mask. I didn't get a flower. I didn't get to say a poem about how I felt or what I was going through. And I think that's when my eyes started opening up, that not all victims are treated the same. Why didn't her life matter as much as the other girl's mom's life? Because at the time, like I said, my grandma treated it with white gloves, and so not a lot I knew about what my mom did or was or whatever at that time. So to me, it was just my mom.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand why her mom was more important than mine.
Right. Even local media, even if they did talk about it, it was in a way that was kind of dehumanizing. I don't even want to say kind of, it was
Hmm.
dehumanizing to Renee. And and so even taking it that as far, I mean, were you aware that, now this is even a bigger conversation? Well, it should have been, but it still felt like it was being restricted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I remember my grandma hiding the newspapers from me, so I didn't see it. So I didn't have to read it, what was going on. Matter of fact, the way my mom was murdered is I found out on a newspaper. My aunt from Florida had came in town for the funeral. And, I kept asking my grandma, what happened? What happened? How did it happen? How did it happen? And they never, they obviously told me that she was murdered, but they never told me how. And like I said, I was 10, so, I understand why.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when my aunt came in, my grandma hurried up and flipped the newspaper over and she said, oh my God, the word was on there. And I ran to the back of the house and I just started crying because I seen it and it said beheaded. So that's how I actually found out, because of the newspapers, because of how it was portrayed out there and just so cut and dry, I guess you would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does that do to a young girl at age 10? You're carrying this immense trauma at this point, and truly you are a trauma survivor. What did life look like up until that point that you got to about 18 years old?
So, like I said, I went through a lot of stages of grief with my mom. So from that age until about, 18, like you say, I idolized her, and then
Yeah.
my grandma and I got in plenty of fights when I said, you're not my mom. I wish you were my mom. I wish my mom was here. And as a bratty teenager, I shouldn't have said those things to her because, she wished she was there too,
Yeah.
and like my grandma always said, because this was supposed to be temporary. Mom was coming back. She was gonna take you back, and I wasn't gonna fight that. Matter of fact, my grandparents never officially adopted me because of that.
Mm,
They just
amazing.
had temporary custody. They never adopted me because it was with the intent that my mom was gonna come back.
Right.
I felt like I got gypped. I got robbed. She was coming back. And in those last couple of visits when she came in town, we talked about it, how she was getting her license for her hair transferred over here. She was, looking at places. Her friend was helping her look for places. All those things was in the works for her to come back and be my mom. And then when I actually went to Mobile and got to see her planner, it was 8 days.
Oh my
She was
gosh.
killed 8 days before she was set to move here.
Oh my gosh.
8 days.
Yeah.
My whole life could have been different. And I'm not saying I had a bad life. It's just that she would have been here. Even if she wouldn't have got custody, she'd have been here. My son would know her. It sucks, and it's hard. Like there's those milestones, my sweet 16. I remember my grandma wrote in our little guest book, your mom is watching over you today. Or graduation from college. It's just those things when she's not there. And
Yeah.
it's always that empty hole that you can't really replace. And everybody in the room can be there and that's great, but it's just, that's my mom. And there's
Mhm.
no other way to say it. It sucks.
Right.
Now, after 18 and when I had my son, I was 20 when I had my son. And from the moment I had him, I didn't let him go. um, I didn't even let the nurses come in and take him to go clean him or whatever. But I went to a stage where I hated my mom. Like the minute I laid eyes on this little human, I was not letting him go. I was not letting him out of my sight. I was not going to let anything happen to him. And to know I was just angry. Like, how could you give me up? How was I not enough? How was I not enough? Because when you have a child, the minute you look at them, it's like, this is your world. No matter what comes, who comes, whatever. My priority is this human that is mine to
Yeah.
make right. So I went through a lot of angry stages with that. And then honestly, it was probably when I started talking to Sarah that and reading my mom's stuff and seeing all the things that she was going through, that is a different kind of appreciation and a huge appreciation for my grandma,
Yeah.
because my grandma was doing all these things back before the internet and back before anything to try to get answers, and she wasn't getting any. But also to know that my mom made the hardest decision she ever had to make, and it was the
Mm.
right decision. And
Right.
she was also 16. So, it taught me to give her some grace
Mhm.
at that moment to say, you know what? She did the right thing. She did the hardest thing she ever had to do. And she was trying to fix that. And she would have fixed that in 8 days. Trauma is a never ending process.
Mhm.
Grief is a never ending process. And some days I'm like, damn it, Renee, why can't you be here?
Yeah.
And in other days, it's like the best place for you is up there watching over us.
I can't ever, put it into words of how sorry I am that that has been your life experience, and which is why you have stuck with me for all these years, because I don't know how someone like yourself, who's so resilient and brave and really just this woman that I have watched blossom, and then being able to watch who you've become since Why Can't We Talk About Amanda's Mom? So I want to transition a little bit, back to Sarah coming in, and essentially she was like, I'm ready to start digging into this case. And, just as you shared, you were ready to learn whatever you needed to learn. So what was that process like? Because I know it also wasn't instantaneously, and we had a lot
Mm-mm.
of conversations and a lot
Yeah.
of meetings. So
Yes.
yeah.
And it is a very complex case. And it's one of those things where it was done so wrong
Hmm.
from the beginning and so unjust, just from the initial media release in Alabama, the way she was described, that whole story could have been flipped if you just said a mother, a
Hmm.
daughter was found beheaded on the side of the interstate. The answers may have been different. The response may have been different, but that's not what was sent out there. They sent it out there that she was a sex worker and that they didn't even have her race right. you know, like
Exactly. Right.
like the mistakes are insane of
Mm.
how wrong it was done, how wrong it was handled from the beginning. And it truly showed that those people that were handling the case at the time did not care. It was like, oh well, another prostitute's gone.
Yeah.
One less thing to worry about. And that's the message they put across.
That was the reason, though, that
Hmm.
Sarah was so hell-bent, was for
Hmm.
this particular reason.
Right. And it's like, well, that's how you put it out there. So of course everybody's gonna be like, oh well, not my problem. But had they said, please help us get answers for a 10-year-old little girl who wants to know what happened to her mom, maybe things would have been different. Answers would have came because maybe the people that did know something back then didn't know she had a child, didn't
Right.
know what was going on the other side.
And your mom was so smart, and she was so loving, because I know I got to read some of those cards that she sent to you. But equally, this was also a woman who had her, to some people, being a sex worker, that screams instability, or, this is somebody who doesn't have her life together. When I'm here to say, oh, best believe that she did. And this is something that, Sarah goes and describes. So, listeners, if you have not listened to Why Can't We Talk About Amanda's Mom, please go do so, because you then will learn how much she actually had her life together. And just as you said, it was 8 days, 8 days that life could have looked so differently. Can you touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, at she was 16 years old. She was a mom. What was she supposed to do? What was she supposed like? There's no way to say I understand because I wasn't in that position. But it goes back to like giving grace. She was
Hmm.
16.
Hmm.
She was too scared to go back home. She had now had a child. She didn't know what to do. And it's easy money,
Yeah. Yeah.
easy, quick money. It got to the point where she was able to put herself through school. She was able to buy herself a house. She was able to buy herself a car. She was able to send money to my grandparents, you know, regularly. And she was making the correct steps to get out of that life,
Hmm.
to
Right.
get away from that life. And my grandma used to always say, she wasn't a prostitute. She wasn't just a sex worker. You know, she was she was very particular about her clientele. She was
Yeah.
very careful about how she went about things. And she danced in clubs and stuff like that, but she made sure she was safe and her
Exactly.
guard was up all the time. So, like I said, she was in a situation where she didn't know, because when she got pregnant, she was married to my dad.
Hmm. Right.
My dad died of a brain aneurysm 6 months later. Her plan was to be a mom and a wife. That was her plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, they didn't find out she was pregnant until actually when they went for the marriage license. So it wasn't even that they got married because she was pregnant. They didn't even know she was pregnant until after.
Wow.
But I was 6 months old when my dad ended up passing away. But that was the life she planned. That's the life that she wanted. And I remember her telling me often how she would have dreams about having multiple kids, and I'd be with me, her, and my dad, and I'd have a little brother and a little sister. That's what she wanted. That was the life she truly wanted.
Yep.
And
Right.
then she was thrown into, what do I do now?
Mhm.
And she did the best she could. And then about 5 to 6 months after my dad passed away is when she told my grandma, like, I can't do this with Amanda here. Like, I have to get myself on my feet, but I
Yeah.
can't do it when she's, raising a baby. And that's why I went back to the temporary custody, because that was the plan. That was always the plan.
So that's the other side of it too, is that your grandmother Joy was also being very assertive in terms of your mom's case as well, and was writing letters, was going in there. Why do you think that was such a battle too?
Well, if you ever met Joyce, she is very headstrong. She raised strong women because of that. We always say that. It's the backbone for sure.
Mhm.
And there's no giving her no for an answer. So my uncle was killed in 1987,
Yeah.
and my grandma didn't get answers for that. And then when it happened with my mom, she felt like there were answers that were there that weren't being conveyed to her, and she felt ignored.
Mhm.
The door was slammed in her face by Mobile Police Department.
Right.
And this is in 1993. So you got to imagine, there's no cell phones, there's no Google, there's no, oh, let me find out. No, none of that. That was her driving 3.5 hours, knocking on doors,
Mhm.
talking to people, printing out letters, at Kinko's or whatever, and putting out signs, and constantly writing the DA, the police department, handwritten letters with no response.
It's maddening.
And she even hired a private investigator. This is money they didn't really have, but she hired a private investigator to help. And it's still, they wouldn't even talk to him. So it was constantly a shut door with the Mobile Police Department. It was constantly we're not going to help you. Oh
Mhm.
well.
One of the things that Sarah shared with me was the first time that you did meet Captain Paul Birch,
Hmm.
and when you went inside, and Sarah describes it as, you were, that presence was there and it was in you.
Hmm.
What was that like for you?
Now, Grandma always said, don't trust the Mobile Police Department,
Mm,
from her experience. So when Sarah said that's where we had to meet at, I was kind of like, ugh, all right, fine. you
yeah,
know. So my guard was way up, and I'm pretty sure I even told him
yeah,
that if you're gonna do it right.
yeah.
Don't bring me into this if you don't have every intention of doing it. If you don't have every intention of helping Sarah. And he said, "Oh no, we're absolutely going to help her.
Mm.
We'll give her whatever she needs." And I was like, because that's not what was done before. So my confidence in you is very low. You
Rightfully so.
know. And so far, from what I'm being told, Sarah, they're very cooperative. She's working with Matt very closely. So, and you hear him as well on the Why Can't We Talk About Amanda's Mom? So I appreciate that. And I'm glad it's different than what it was. But I was very skeptical, very.
Yeah,
Like, it's to the point where when I would drive from New Orleans to Florida, we would not stop at a Mobile exit, because
yeah,
wanted nothing to do with that area. Nothing.
yeah.
The first time I ever actually went to Mobile was to meet Sarah.
And I
It
respect that.
just it haunted me for so long. And I don't think people can grasp the little things like that.
Mhm.
Like being stuck in traffic and going somewhere and you really have to use the bathroom, and then as the traffic build up and I'm like, oh well, I'll pee on myself before I stop at this exit. Like, that was real for
Yeah.
30 years, 35 years.
And you even, I saw this footage, but you also went to where your mom's body was found for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Well, I can honestly say it was the closest I've ever felt to my mom in a long time. And it came in like a wave. Like I told Sarah, I know it was here. I know this is the right spot because I can feel it. I can feel it. And my mom has a nice way of putting little things out into the universe to show that she's there. And when we left, after filming, when we left, we walked back to where our cars were, and there was a car, and the license plate was Renee,
Oh my
spelled
gosh.
just like my mom's name.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So it was like, I see you. I get it. I see you. You know, I got it. Yeah. So it's just, it was definitely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I've been to the point where um I put everybody else's trauma or whatever before my own. And we met the guy who found my mom that day. And I was so worried about how he was doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And he's like, I'm sorry to tell you this. And it's just so many people were affected.
Yeah.
Like even him, he said that to the day he dies, he's going to remember that.
Yeah.
He's going to see that, you know?
And that's a big part of it where I think gets lost sometimes when we're, listening to true crime stories is that this is also like a pebble ripple being thrown in the water because it is also the community who's holding on to this. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. And this is a small town in Mobile.
Very,
Yeah.
very. Like the sheriff's office in a strip mall next to a Dollar
Yeah.
General
Yeah.
type small.
Right.
Like somebody knows something.
Hmm. And that's literally what the podcast is about and what it's
Mhm.
about. And it's still ongoing, people. I want to, I said this in Sarah's episode, and I will make sure that I say it here, but you do not know all of what's going on behind the scenes. You do not know all of, the information that they're gathering. And this goes for any case, any cold case.
Mhm.
So keeping in mind, there are levels that, is shared out into, the podcast, but when it's something like this, there is a lot that they have to hold. When you were able to finally share to your world and community that this podcast was coming out, what was the response like?
Overwhelming. Um
Yeah.
honestly, um I have a lot of people that I know. I have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of friends,
Yeah.
but not many people
Hmm.
know what happened, including my son at the time. I mean, I kind of did like my grandma age appropriate was. And then, he knew what happened, but he didn't know everything because I didn't think it was relevant for him to know that. But, we went through it, everything. And when we talked about it, but when I started talking about it on Facebook, a lot of people didn't even know that Joyce wasn't my mom.
Hmm.
um, and then they didn't know my mom was murdered. And then they surely didn't know how it happened or that it was unsolved. So
Yeah.
it was very personal for me to get it out there, but it was also very like it was freeing in a way because then now that I hit it, but it's something you just don't talk about, right?
Exactly.
So, but it was very like delicate, and I was worried. I'm not gonna say I wasn't. I was worried what people would think, what people would say about or to my son, to me. What would when all the dirty laundry's out there, how's it gonna come across?
Yeah.
And I have been very fortunate that everyone has been so supportive and so waiting for the next episode, waiting to know what happens. I have people ask me all the time, on a random day, I was just thinking about your mom. Oh, did y'all find the answers? Or what about this? Have y'all thought about this? And it's just so heartwarming to know that Renee is touching so many people.
She has. Mhm.
all over the world, all over again, and like I told Sarah, I said, the name of the podcast is Why Can't We Talk About Amanda's Mom? I'm like, well, we're talking about her.
Yeah, we
And
are.
she's getting the attention that she deserved. And they're getting that little glimpse of the light that she had,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
my cousin had said it best. He said, the reason why I don't talk about it is because there's no way we can replace that light that she brought. And it's true, and everybody deals with things differently, but I'm glad to be able to talk about it. And I've
yeah.
always said it. And if it can help one person talk about it, and it has. Like there was a girl I worked with, I wasn't really close with, I work virtually, so don't really get to know people. And when she heard about the podcast, she told me how her mom was murdered.
Wow.
And it's something I never would have known because you don't share those type of things. But I was glad she was able to talk to me about it. And she said the same thing: be careful with the media, be careful what people put out there. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if they're going to twist things or say the wrong thing or take your words and put it some different way.
Hmm.
And so I feel like I've been very fortunate that with Sarah and you and everybody who is working on this know how vocal I am and have not strayed or, you know, been untrue to who she was, who our family is.
And I want to especially shout out ARC Media because,
Hmm.
when Sarah and I were in these early stages of trying to figure out how the story was going to be told, but we were battling the same exact things from other production companies, people's notes of like, well, we can't do a project on a sex worker. That's, it all of a sudden was very clear to
Hmm.
Sarah and I that, oh, there is a specific victim order and who is worthy of that recognition or not. And so,
Yep.
Zach Harriman is one of the most incredible people that I have ever met in my life. But
Hmm.
on top of that, this was a man who said, no, we've got to talk about this and we're gonna figure out a way. And so being able to watch that journey, sitting back here because once that really was a go, I was in the midst of, filming other projects and whatnot, but I was right there to find out, how this was coming along. So in turn, I would love to learn how that initial day went when the podcast finally was released. What were you going through at that time?
A lot of people listened to it before I did. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, as much as I wanted to listen to it first thing, when I woke up that morning, my wife said, "Look, I'm going to listen to them all of them first,
Wow.
and when I get home, we'll listen to it together." That way, she could kind of warn me. There was some episodes where she's like, "This is going to be a rough one."
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be mad. You might want to go work in the garden. Like
Yeah.
this is going to be a rough one. But so that's how we did it for every episode. So I used to tell people all the time, don't spoil it for me because I'm listening to it after most people are, because most people are like, oh, it's Wednesday. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I greatly appreciate it. And I was like, I'll talk about it. So what I did was when I posted it on social media, I would kind of recap the previous week in my post with home pictures, around the time they were talking about in that, or if they mentioned the specific picture, I would put the picture up so
Yeah.
people could kind of see it. And it was just so amazing that people all over the country were hearing about this podcast. I'm in groups for books,
Mhm.
and somebody asked, "What's a good podcast?" And before I can even go say it, somebody I have no idea who this was and lives in 5 states over. She went, "You gotta listen to this one, Amanda's mom." I'm like, "That's mine." I'm Amanda.
Oh.
And it's crazy to think that, but I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And
Yeah.
and now they have the season 2 with a different story. And that's why I was like, it's an honor for it to have started with us,
Yeah. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
her.
And it's gonna keep going because
Hmm.
I mean, truly, when I tell people about it, they're just like, wait, what? Where this podcast? I'm like, let me tell you. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And I think you are right. Just we are finally talking about Renee. It is finally a conversation where she is respected as a human, but as your mother. And that
Yes.
was the biggest takeaway that, I had even said, I did an interview and we initially started talking about Renee's case, Sarah and I said, I can imagine my own mom, let alone then the world telling me she's not worthy enough to have this coverage. So it was just so heartwarming to watch that from afar and seeing that happen and seeing how much love and support people were sending your way. And I just hope that was truly a part of that healing journey that I'm sure is you're still on. So with that, can you talk to me a little bit about Carla and
Hmm.
how that has kind of also shaped, your healing journey and the support system that you need, especially now that this case is so out in the open and fully in the media's attention?
Yeah, absolutely. So she has just been a gem through this whole process. I was young when we got together. I was 23. Um, and very damaged, very hurt, very going through the angry stages of dealing with my mom. So she's been through all of the ups and downs. And when Sarah first came to me, and after I looked into Sarah and I told her about it, and she was like, "I'll back you, whatever you want to do. Whatever, if you want to do
Yeah,
this, let's do it."
yeah,
And she went to Mobile with me. She was at all those interviews and just my rock. That way I could just look back and be like, okay, I got this. I got this. And honestly, I'm so glad that she was able to be with me the first time I went to the place she was found. Yeah, and something so unfamiliar to have my comfort, my person there was definitely needed. And like I said, she would listen to all the podcasts. So she'd have to listen to it twice essentially, but she'd listen to it all
yeah,
first and then come home and listen to it again with me and also navigate the feelings with our son. He had questions. He is 21 years old and wild and angry at times. Like he
yeah,
has that boy testosterone and we're like, calm down. He's like, I'm gonna go. I'm like, you're not gonna do anything. Just calm down.
yeah,
And so she helps with that part as well. But it's just to know that she's always been there and her family is extremely close, but they welcomed us as well. And all of them listen to it. Her nieces are listening to it
wow,
just so everybody knows that every victim matters.
yes,
It doesn't matter what your job was, because essentially we're judging her on what her job was.
mm,
That's
yeah,
like saying trash men don't deserve justice if he was to get killed tomorrow. That's not the truth. You're judging her on her job,
yes,
which in essence, when people get murdered, 9 out of 10 times their job is not in the broadcast at all,
correct, correct, yep,
at all, because it doesn't matter
yep,
because they're still a victim. But in her case, that's the only thing that mattered. So I just hope that moving forward for anybody, that job description is removed, or their arrest record is removed because a human life is a human life. And what happened to her, unimaginable. She wasn't hit
yeah,
by a car. She wasn't shot. She wasn't just stabbed. She was mutilated. And for it to not get that attention is even worse.
exactly,
So I know I went on a tangent, but anyway, so yes, Carla has been amazing. She has always been there. She's always been very supportive. She, even when it was all in the thick of it, right? When every week it was coming out, new people listening to it, or, some people are more candid with the questions. Some people, that
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not really close with would come out and ask questions. Or we'd be at a birthday party or in a bar or anywhere, and people would just come ask me about it.
wow,
Carla would kind of like intervene, like, we're not talking about it right now. We're not gonna talk about
exactly,
that right now. She's having a good
yeah,
time. We're not talking about it.
yeah,
Because for the first couple weeks after we went out for a birthday party, some girl I went to elementary school came up to me and she was crying, telling me how sorry she was about my mom, and I appreciated it, but at the moment it was kind of like, what, like, overwhelming, like, what is going on? Like, that's not even what we're here for. Like, I'm not here to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. you know
yeah,
it's Friday night at 11 o'clock. That's the last thing I want to talk about right now. I stopped going places. Like, I stopped,
yeah,
literally. Like, I said, I'm not gonna go to that party because I don't want people to come up to me and talk to me about it. I was getting
Yeah.
groceries delivered because I didn't want to go to Walmart in case I ran into somebody. And
Hmm.
then Carla and I just had it like, she's like, no, what we're going to do is if somebody brings it up, you give me the look and I'll just say it. She's not going to talk about it right now. Luckily, she only had to do it a few times, but she's definitely there to do that,
Uh,
and it was
yeah.
needed because it was overwhelming for sure.
Well, you went from nobody to everybody. And I can't
Yes.
imagine, and I think that's the important part that we talk about. Because, like I shared with you before, we started recording, you're one of the first people I've had on that really hasn't had that media attention and decades of this. So it's like, how do you deal with that? Because this is now, just as you said, this is brand new to people, but this is not brand new to you.
Hmm.
And so having to reconcile that, and thank goodness for Carla for being,
Hmm.
that boundary for you, because also that's a hard thing to say, you see someone who wants to connect with you to have this conversation, but it's like, I can't do that right now. And just as you said, some of those instances you were out to go have fun, to go
Right.
do exactly what you were intended to do. So one, I applaud you for being able to recognize that and establish those boundaries. But truly, Carla, whew, thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. That's incredible. And
And look,
today, yeah,
I want the world to know,
yes,
and I'll
yes.
deal with the repercussions of what I have to do in the meantime. But like I told everybody, it wasn't about ever about a podcast. It wasn't ever
Yep,
about a TV show or anything. It was about
yep,
answers.
yep.
And now that and that's what I told Sarah. I said, the problem is now I have people listening. And now I surely won't shut up because before nobody was listening.
Mm-hmm,
Now people are listening. And
mm-hmm,
now I have your attention.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And
hopefully.
our fingers are crossed, and I will disclose at the end of this episode again, if you do have tips, I will, rightfully share where you can go and submit those, because it's not over. It's not over. And, I will keep screaming about this case and keep screaming about Renee, because she deserves the justice and you deserve the justice. And so does Joyce. So just
Yes.
know that I get 100% what you're saying there. So on that note, though, your kiddo, he's 21 now. He's
Yes.
doing big things. Can you
Yes.
talk to me about being an army mama now?
I know it's so crazy. You look at this little baby and you never know what the world's going to give to him. And
Mhm.
I always say, everybody will tell us how well behaved he is and how polite he is. And I say, I can't take credit for all of that. He just
Mm.
has the biggest heart and the biggest soul that he's like an old man, like he just, I say it's my grandpa. He's named after my grandpa, his middle name. I
Mm.
say he's after my grandpa because my grandpa's heart is in him. Like he's like a Carla. They have that loving nature and just want to do good for everybody. And he is such a bright light. You
Yeah.
know, if people say what people say when they join the military, they kind of change and they get more stern. Not my son. Um, he still has goofy personality, but that was what makes him him. He's
Yeah.
one soldier of the month. He's one soldier of the quarter. He's up
Oh
for
my
soldier of the
goodness.
year
Whew.
this month. So he's doing great. Yeah, he's doing great.
Ah, well, needless to say, please thank him for
I
doing this
will.
service on behalf of our country, and truly, that's incredible, and I'm so happy to hear that.
Hmm.
Amazing. So, last question for you before we get to know Amanda. What advice would you offer to a trauma survivor who is considering, getting their story out in the media, especially for a loved one like a parent? What would you say to them?
Have your support system.
Yeah.
If it's your spouse, if it's your other family members. 'Cause, I was very close to my cousin Tiffany. She was able to, she was there through everything as well. She was very
Yeah.
much a big part in this journey for me. Somebody who knew my mom and talked to somebody. I got a counselor, like a therapist, because
Yeah.
at the time my son was in boot camp. This podcast is coming out. I'm like all over the place, but I. And that's okay. You need to talk to somebody. It's okay to talk to
Yeah.
somebody to navigate those feelings and be open. Because look, there's some things I didn't want to hear about my mom. There's some hard truths that you don't want to hear. But once you hear them, accept them and give your parents some grace, the detective some grace, and help.
Yeah.
Like, help the investigation. Help it as much as you can. Being involved as you can be.
Yeah.
Whatever your level of being involved. Now, me, I want to be all involved. I want to know who she talks to when she probably gets aggravated, but I'm like, who you talk to, what they said, where you met her at, where she came from. I want to know every small little detail. But if you don't want to know every small little detail, that's okay too.
Right.
Whatever your comfort level is, and set those boundaries. Like you said, if there's times that you don't want to talk about it, it's okay not to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to say, hey, look, not today. I appreciate you asking me, but we'll talk about it another time.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that. All right, Miss Amanda, I'm going to ask you some questions, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever just comes to you, you answer. So, first thing, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
100% I want to be invisible.
Mm,
Why is just because, like that fly in the wall kind of thing. It's like, I wonder what is going on, what's really going on over here.
yeah,
So definitely to be invisible.
I like it. Now, what's the most interesting thing you've read, watched, or listened to recently?
I'm a big reader.
Yeah.
So I would have to say I'm stuck on all Frida McFadden's books right now.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm stuck on all her books. I have her new release coming out, and I'm getting it next week. But her last book I read was The Boyfriend. That was good. But I also um been reading just a lot, and that helps me sleep at night, just to get my
Oh,
mind out of everything. So
yeah.
yeah, just Frida McFadden's books probably been my biggest.
Oh, I like it. Do you have a favorite show or movie, even like a comfort show?
This is gonna be very cliche, living in the South, but Steel Magnolias and Fried Green Tomatoes are definitely my comfort movies.
Oh, hell yeah.
My cousin and I, Tiffany, we watch those every day during the summertime. We could probably recite them word for word, but it's just one of those happy and nostalgic movies that just brings you back to
Yeah.
just being in the moment of watching the movie and not thinking of anything else.
Yeah. Amen. Still Magnolias gets me
Hmm.
every time. How about music? Are you into it?
Not as much as Carla is. Carla's a big music person. She listens to the lyrics kind of thing. She
Yeah.
sends me songs all the time. Hey, listen to this. Hey, listen to. I'm like, yeah, yeah, listen to it. Like, you didn't get it. I'm like, yeah, listen to it. But so, but I love to go to concerts. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
down for a concert.
What's one of your favorite concerts?
But most recently, we went to Post Malone in Nashville. So that was
Oh, hell yeah.
amazing. Amazing. Carla's a huge
Uh,
postie. So I was like, all right, let's just go. And
uh,
it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to, hands down. He
oh,
was
that's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, he bought out Blake Shelton, and so it was definitely
Dang.
amazing.
Wow. And Nashville.
Hmm.
I love Nashville. Now, if you were an animal, which one would you be and why?
Always, always said this, even when I was a kid. Always be a cheetah
Hmm.
because I ran track as a child, so I always wanted to be super fast. So I still go by that.
Oof, I love it. How about a hobby or passion that might surprise people?
Well, recently I found out that I can make wreaths, which I was totally
Yes.
not even
Yes.
anticipating. I was sick, and when you're sick, you're just scrolling on the phone, and I was looking at TikTok, and a wreath came up, and I'm like, that looks pretty easy. I think I could do that. And I was like, I need a Halloween wreath and a fall wreath to myself anyway, because mine
Yeah.
were old. And I'm like, worst case scenario, I have an ugly wreath for a holiday. And then I made it, and I sent it to Carla, and she didn't say anything. And when she came home, I'm like, you didn't even say anything. And she's like, wait, you made that? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I thought that was one of your Pinterest pictures. I was like, no, I made that. And then I posted it on my Facebook story, and somebody's like, I want it. How much? And I was like, wait, what? Yeah,
Oh
so since
my
then, I
gosh.
think I've sold over 40 wreaths since October.
Get out of here.
It's crazy. Yeah,
Yay. That
yeah,
is so
definitely
exciting.
not anticipating that at all, at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But I love it, and it's
Yeah.
just I like I limit myself to not get burnt out, and just
Hmm.
do them when I can do them, and
Hell
definitely
yeah.
that's
That's
what
amazing.
why my doorbell rang earlier. Somebody was picking up a wreath.
That's incredible. But you're
Yeah.
making like not just holiday ones because I
Mm-mm.
did you make some Saints ones as well?
Hmm.
That's what I thought.
I've done a Saints one, a breast cancer one. We had a
Wow.
Gretna Fest here, so I did a themed one for that big festival.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
Well,
Mardi
we'll
Gras,
post
I've
some of
already done a
these.
Mardi Gras one, even though
Oh,
Mardi Gras is not
you're
until
gonna
March.
be busy still. It's like
Yes.
pre-orders now because
Yeah.
I'm sure you will be busy. Oh, that's incredible. I love it. Well, this next song, I don't know now that I know about you and music, but do you have a go-to karaoke song or anything?
I'm not very good at karaoke. I can't really sing well.
Yeah.
However, I do always sing Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks.
Really?
I
Oh,
don't
I
know why.
love
It's just what it is. I
that.
guess I know all the words. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have to think about it too much.
I love that answer. How about a travel spot? Is there like a place where you have gone that is just like so peaceful and it makes you feel good?
Actually, Guatemala. I never thought I would say that,
Mm.
but Carla's family's from Guatemala, and this is my second time going. And I just love the Lake Atlan over there. It's surrounded
Wow.
by volcanoes and just the blue water, and it's just so peaceful. So
Oh,
peaceful.
oh, what an answer. Now, listeners, if you haven't caught on yet, Amanda's in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm dying to know, local favorites. Like, is there a restaurant, bookshop, bar? You can name whatever you would like at this point.
So, fun fact about New Orleans, well, about me in New Orleans, I don't really like seafood. So, um,
Yeah.
when you're peeling, like as a kid, my grandpa would get ice chest full of shrimp, and we would have to peel the shrimp so
Ooh.
my grandma can freeze it on the weekends.
Yeah.
I cannot stand the smell of shrimp. Cannot
Oh,
stand it. I will
yeah.
eat boiled seafood anywhere, anything, any kind of boiled seafood, but shrimp. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So but I will say, of course, everybody knows about Mardi Gras in New Orleans and downtown. But my favorite part of the city is probably uptown by St. Charles and Magazine.
Mm,
It's just like history rich. Also, the architecture in St. Charles is absolutely gorgeous. It's these big, huge plantation style homes.
yeah.
Um, the streets are lined with trees. The streetcar passes by. So,
Wow.
and Magazine Street has a whole bunch of different like local shops and food and stuff like that. So downtown,
Yeah.
of course, is obviously where everybody wants to be, but for a good Saturday morning brunch, you want to go uptown.
Is there a certain place that you like to go?
Ruby Slipper.
Ruby Slipper. Okay. I'll be posting that. That
Hmm.
sounds
They have it
amazing.
downtown and uptown, but I like I like them both, but
Yeah.
uptown's where it's at.
Hell yeah. Oh, I love it. Now I'll definitely have to go next time I'm out.
Yeah,
Now, last question. Who are some of your heroes and how have they inspired you?
hands down, my grandma. Um, she doesn't get enough credit for sure.
Yeah.
She raised six kids. When the youngest was 11 years old, she took me in at 11 months old. And then she's lost two children, both were murdered. She's still kicking, and she still has a great outlook. She's tough as nails, but also sweet as can be.
Yeah.
She's just one of a kind. She's still feisty. She's who I want to be. And people say it all the time. That's gonna be you. That's gonna be you. And I'm like, I hope so.
Yeah.
She's my best friend. She's my person.
Mhm.
She's just and it's different the older you get, your relationship changes. And as it has evolved, I've always been able to talk to her. Um, we've butt heads, we've fought more than probably most of her kids.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's nothing I wouldn't do for that woman. You know, I even told her the other day, I said, if you keep this up, you're gonna be living in my shed. But you know, and I think we've come full circle. You know, she's my bestie.
I love that answer. I have one quick question about Joyce. Her Coca-Cola collection.
Mm-hmm.
What was that about? What started that?
I don't know. To be honest,
Really?
I don't. Now I'm gonna ask her. I'm gonna ask her. I had to bring her food today, so I'm gonna ask her. But she, it's just one of the things that's always been.
Yeah.
She has on her wall those big tin trays of Cokes, like from the 30s and 40s. You know, it's just always been there.
Is she a big
Always
Coke
been.
drinker?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Which is also a problem in her old age, however. But yes, she is a big Coke drinker. She won't give it up either. So
yeah.
it is what it is.
Joyce, my goodness. Amanda, like, truly, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing all of these stories. I know it's not easy, and I know it goes without saying that you have just emerged into this beautiful person that I have got to watch over these last, oh my goodness, 6 years. And so getting to do this conversation with you today is such an honor, first of all. And truly, like I said, you know, it is our mission to get those answers that you deserve, Joyce deserves, along with Renee. And like I shared, we will be putting up, you know, more information on there if anybody has any tips. But with that being said, thank you for sharing your story and doing one of the hardest things that any child could do. And truly, you have touched so many lives, and I know that this podcast has already made a difference for so many. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate all that y'all do. I can't put into words.
If you have any information at all about the murder of Renée Bergeron in Theodore, Alabama on November 13th, 1993, please contact the Mobile County Sheriff's Office at 251-574-8633 or submit an anonymous tip online at mobileso.com. Join me next week when I sit down with Rachel Gibberman, a seasoned true crime producer whose journey in the industry is nothing short of remarkable. From her early days at America's Most Wanted to working on In Pursuit with John Walsh, Rachel has spent over a decade alongside the Walsh family, bringing justice to victims, survivors, and their families. Her unique perspective and deep empathy for trauma survivors make her story one of wisdom, heart, and resilience. Stay tuned for this inspiring conversation coming up next week. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a review for the show. Thank you for listening, and as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.